I've been broke before and I'll be broke again, but take my advice out there. Smoke a reefer, get a headband, and play rock and roll.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raylan Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too. Welcome back to another episode of Music is Funny. I'm Raylan Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright.
From the Raylan Nelson Band.
Yep, we have another fantastic comedian for you guys today.
Yeah, he's got a cool and inspiring story because he didn't start comedy until mid-40s.
Mid-40s, I think. And he was perfect because he spent his early years in a rock band and then touring around as a solo artist. So he did 20 years in the music biz. So he was perfect to talk to.
Yeah, and he's seen every great band.
Literally, I think every great band from the late 70s and 80s, he saw them at their peak somehow.
Yeah, he's got to come see our band to, really make that list round out.
We probably haven't reached our peak yet.
Well, there's that. He's one of the hardest working comedians. He's DIY.
Yeah, very punk rock approach to everything. Doesn't really have a manager or agents or any of that. He's done it all himself. And the end is great.
Yeah. You have to stick around for the trip to the Papa Willie fortune teller machine because it's just great.
That's true. And he doesn't really do podcasts until you've had like 100 episodes in.
But since we got Doug Stanhope, he was down.
He's a fan of Doug's like we are, so Doug gave us some credit, which is fantastic. Anyway, comedian, one of the best Bon Scott voices in the business.
A true rock star comedian, Adine Del Rey.
Hi, Raylan. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on. This is JB.
JB, man. Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this, dude.
All right. Oh, yeah. I saw Stanhope did it, so I said, all right, let's do this.
That's the big
good.
Yeah, that's the big reason we tried to get him first, because he's definitely got a lot of cred with some of the other comics,
Well, he is a high watermark of comedy to me. Doesn't do any bullshit. So, I get offer. People hit me every day to do their podcast, and it's funny because I'll go and look at their podcast, and they'll have like 3 episodes. They did one every 2 years. You're like, hey man, I'll do it when you get to episode 100, and then if they get there, I'll do it.
As far as podcasting goes, you pretty much what you're doing, and consistency seems to be the thing.
Well, I've been doing it 10 years, 750 episodes. Wow. So 580 Let There Be Talks, and then about 111 on my Patreon. Never missed a Monday in the 10 years, even after being run over on my motorcycle. I still did the podcast from my bed. It is a consistency thing, and it's also a quality thing too. A lot of people have terrible recordings. They just think I'll just do it on my iPhone and put it out. And after a while, people are just kind of like, they don't know why they stop listening, but it's usually probably bad sound or bad content or no consistency. And a lot of people don't really think about what they're going to do with their podcast. They're like, I'm going to interview such and such people. And it's like, okay, well, that might last a month. And then what? It's really tough, and it's flooded the market. I'm glad I got in 10 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think a lot of people assume that they can get on and talk for 3 hours like Joe Rogan does without a script, and just let it fly. And it's like, there's certain people with talent that can do that. Most people can't hold an attention for 3 hours, much less that you can just get on and fly by the seat of your pants.
It also depends on what kind of guests you can get. I don't have a manager or an agent, so I've been hustling these guests from my life of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And it is a daily grind, a stressful grind. And many times I wanted to quit. And then right when I thought I was, boom, I'd land like John Mayer or, Paul Stanley or AC/DC or something and be like, oh, I'm back in.
I was about to say, and Raylan, you're going to have to excuse me for this, but the AC/DC stuff was fantastic for old AC/DC heads like me and a lot of my friends. Not only, you got Brian, you got Angus, amazing. You got Cliff. Wow. When you got Phil Rudd to sit down and talk, I mean, that had, as a music fan, it had to blow your mind. But how did you get that? Clearly you're a hard worker and been hustling, so they knew you were legit. But that's a big get, man.
Well, it's funny because I named the podcast after AC/DC, Let There Be Talk.
Except for this particular one, for those about to talk, you flipped it around just for Brian.
Right, exactly.
Nice. Yeah.
Yep. And it was, once in a while you're working your ass off and years go by and you're like, is anybody paying attention to this? And I don't toot my own horn. But it is interesting when you look through the body of work I've had and you're like, well, wait, I mean, look, I got over 10 million downloads and I think about that stuff, but I also think about I think it's like one of the premier rock podcasts of the entire the entire podcast community. And I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, weekly, I have people go, man, I just found this. And I'm so grateful for that. But there was somebody at Sony that was a fan of the podcast and they flew out. I do that tribute to Bon Scott once a year.
We'll get to that. Definitely.
Yeah. And he flew out and he said, I love this podcast and I've been listening for years. And I think I got something cool for you. And the original concept was we were going to wrap a tour bus in the new AC/DC tour art, and we were going to take this tribute to 5 cities, and we were going to promote the new record with the tour bus, give people cool swag and stuff, and then do this show in 5 cities, me, Bill Burr, Mark Maron, and then the all-star band. And that was the original idea. No one knew AC/DC was putting a record out, and we met behind closed doors. I signed an NDA, and that was really what we wanted to do. And then when COVID hit, it went away. And so for a year, I knew about this record and couldn't tell anybody. And I was going to, at one point, I was like, I'm just going to do a podcast about it. Fuck it. And because everybody was like, I think there's a record out there. And I had heard the whole thing secretly. And then right when I was thinking I should do that, I was like, I don't want to do that because the guy trusted me. And then the AC/DC interview happened and they pitched the 2 dudes. And I go, look, I need to talk to the other guys. They mean so much to me also.
It was a nice touch bringing Bill Burr on for the second half of that. Because number one, the helicopter thing. And number two, I know what a big drummer guy he is. That probably, I know he's probably helped you a lot out in your career or whatever, but that almost even the playing field with that one right there, I'm sure. Because again, Phil Rudd, man.
Well, with Maron and Burr, they are my mentors in comedy and have helped me immensely in my career, especially Maron putting me on his podcast when I was 3 years in. It skyrocketed me out in the world as far as people knowing who I was as a comedian. So I'm constantly trying to give back to them in a way I can. And they are both rock and roll fanatics. And I lived that life my whole life. So it was very cool to let them jam with some of their heroes every year on stage and do whatever I can, and when they flip out, I go, well, that's exactly how I feel when you have me open for you at the LA Forum or something, I go, that's the level in my eyes of, thank you to them, they're like, I can't believe I'm on stage right now playing with Nikki Sixx, or Greg Dooley, from Afghan Wigs or Scott Ian. And I'm like, I can't believe I opened for you at the LA Forum. Right. So it's my way of constantly giving back to them. And also I get off on watching people lose their minds, being able to do stuff like that. It really, gives me a lot of good feeling.
And you have an interesting story, right? You started off as a musician.
I did. I played music 25 years.
And you're still a musician, right? You still play.
Nah, I don't play at all. I only do the Bond thing, and I don't miss it at all either.
Did you have any ideas when you were starting out did you have any designs on comedy as a kid at all, or was it straight rock and roll? And then as you went down the line, sort of an afterthought of this whole comedy thing?
I wanted to do comedy as a kid. I loved the original cast of Saturday Night Live. I loved Bill Murray. I loved Caddyshack. I loved the Three Stooges. I loved Cheech and Chong. I loved Richard Pryor. I loved the outlawness of them saying bad words on records and talking about drugs and talking about just stuff that when you're a kid in the 70s that would blow your mind. I didn't know how to do it at the time because I was a kid growing up in the Bay Area and all comedians were kind of adults, even though looking back now, they were just in their early 20s and looked like adults because they had like sideburns and stuff, right. You know, but I was a Belushi freak. It was really John Belushi and it was really Cheech and Chong and it was Richard Pryor and later Bill Hicks. But I didn't know how to get into that. And at the same time, to me, comedy was rock and roll. They went hand in hand at a party. You put on a Cheech and Chong record, then you put on, you know, Van Halen 1, and then you put on like Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, and then it's Eddie Murphy, whatever. They were all the same to me. That was when the comedians were rock and roll. And, you know, you get into Kinnison later and it kept drawing me in. But once I started playing music, I'm not a guy that dabbles. So I was all in. Same with comedy. I've done almost 5,000 shows in 10 years now. And it's definitely something I've taken the long route to my calling. I can play music. I wrote records and I've toured the world. But I absolutely love comedy more than anything.
Let's talk about some of that touring stuff, because I'm sure there's differences and similarities of, you know, the comedy and musical touring and stuff. When you were like, what age were you when you started seriously in a band, you know, and getting out on the road and doing that kind of thing?
Well, I started playing music like around high school, just kind of put together a band to play the high school quad. Right. You know, and then you start, you know, I mean, it was really just AC/DC. You know, one of the first shows I saw was the lineup. It was Cheap Trick, AC/DC, Journey, Blue Oyster Cult, Ted Nugent, 1978, September 2nd.
Well, if you're going to get hooked, that's a lineup that'll hook you.
I listen to all those bands these days. It's tough to listen to Ted these days, but I still do it a little bit. But all the other bands, I mean, you got to look at it. That was AC/DC's Power Age tour, and that was Journey's Infinity record, which I think is a masterpiece.
Monster.
And a monster record. Cheap Trick, who I think are just unreal. And BOC. I've had them all on the podcast, a lot of them. I had Greg Raleigh and Neil Sean on together. And wow. that was mind boggling. So that was basically it for me. I needed to play rock and roll after seeing Angus go through the crowd and Ted Nugent on the, you know, Weekend Warriors.
He'd swing on a vine in the loincloth.
Yeah, all that. And that was it for me. And I never missed a show of anybody. I've seen thousands of shows. Cow Palace. I was a kid, you know, single mom. I was on the run. That was it. I was lucky. Bay Area had all the big concerts, all of them, and they would play multiple nights. I saw Back in Black tour 3 nights. I've seen Van Halen Fair Warning 2 nights, 3 nights, Women and Children, all the nights, multiple nights, you know. So, and I've seen everybody except for Skynyrd and Zeppelin.
What was your first concert that you saw?
That was it. And then after that, it was Kiss Dynasty Tour 79 at the Cow Palace. And then from there on, it was just pretty much every week, I would either go to the old Waldorf in San Francisco or the Stone and see rock bands every night almost.
Yeah, man, we're about the same age, and that was if you're at the age of where you're going out and seeing shows, what a golden time to hit your, late teens, early 20s, man.
I was seeing stuff every night. Like I would go see Gamma, Ronnie Montrose's band. They would just play right in town, like, or in the Bay Area, like 4 different nights. Like, oh, I'm going to the Keystone. I'm going to go to Santa Rosa. Then they're playing in San Jose. Just go to all of them, Sammy Hagar, just anything, Y&T like crazy. These were like not the giant bands, but really my rock college where you could see people every night.
Yeah, man. And so, when you committed, I'm going to be a musician, how long was it before you decided to give up the goat? I know it becomes a struggle out there. You can make ends meet and not go broke, but sometimes it'll break a man. So like, what was the journey through that?
Well, I played 25 years. So I was in a couple bands, and then, I played guitar when I was young, but set it down because I became a front man. Nobody wanted to be a singer. You know how that is. Like everybody wanted to be the guitar player. No one wanted to sing. So I go, all right, I guess I'll sing. And, figured that journey out, played hard rock and metal for about, I would say 10 years. And then, people like Willie, I saw the Highwaymen.
Yeah.
It got into alt country. When alt country hit, Lucinda Williams, Car Wheels on a Gravel Road,
right?
Whiskey Town, Sun Volt, Wilco's being there was just an absolute game changer for me, especially the song Sunken Treasure. I was like, I need to, and Mother Hips, another band.
Yeah.
Mother Hips really, really, and Black Crowes, Amorica era.
Yeah.
And so that turned me into this kind of alt country guy. Springsteen, I finally liked him, hated him growing up. My mom loved him. I was like, born in the USA, terrible. Now Springsteen, top 5 for me. I've seen him so many times, including the Broadway show. But I bought a guitar, decided to start all over, got an acoustic and a Fender Tele, got a studio rehearsal in San Fran, locked myself in there, bought a video called Learn Guitar on the VCR.
Nice.
And then in a year, I wrote a record and recorded it. And I put that record out and hit the road as a solo artist, Dean Del Rey, and did zillions of gigs everywhere, toured all over, and did that for years. And then I would say somewhere around 2006, I just tapped out. There was just, you were trying to sell CDs, you'd be at a show and they go, dude, my friends downloaded it for me. We love it. They burned it on CD for me,
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that's my income. And I was like, wow, it's coming to an end. You're going from making a living to coming home and being broke. And that doesn't fly. And I didn't do it for money. But after 25 years, I was like, I kind of done. I didn't really tell anybody. I just played one last gig, put my guitar in the case and drove up the hill. And that was it. And then I got a job selling motorcycles at Harley. I go, I love Harleys. Let's do this. And a couple years went by, and then Tarantino's people came into the Harley dealer, said that they wanted to do a biker film called Hell Ride, asked if I would advise on it. I did, landed a role in that movie. And from that movie, I landed a role in a Ice Cube film called The Long Shots, a football film. And I met 3 comedians on that film, Michael Collier, Garrett Morris from Saturday Night Live, so full circle now, and Earthquake. And we shot for 2 months in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I asked him what they did. I knew what Garrett did. And Earthquake said he was a comedian. I said, I want to try comedy. And they were laughing at me like, get out of here. You're too old, man. You're 44. And then after a few weeks, Earthquake could see I was kind of funny, riffing on the script. And He said, here's what you got to do. You get home, you hit the open mics, you write jokes, and you go for it. And from there, I never stopped. And it's been 10 years, almost 5,000 shows.
So to be clear, up to that point, you were doing this without any representation or any of that stuff. It was just nose to the grindstone and just hustling. Still
no manager, still no agent, because the industry, which I had no idea and no animosity, because in this world, you can build your own thing through podcasting and Instagram and hard work. But what I had no idea was there was an ageism going on in the industry. Now, when I was watching comedy, I was watching Bill Burr, Rogan, Maron, and I was like, well, these guys are my age. So this is great. People like that. Well, I forgot that they'd been in it for 30 years. Right. So yeah, they've been working the whole time. So they're in the industry. But you pop in the industry at 44 and white, and they don't care how funny you are. I mean, I was passed at the Comedy Store and the New York Comedy Cellar, in a period of 3 years. And that's something no one's really done, maybe a couple people. And I was still getting nothing. So it's okay, though. I've gotten where I am. But I really do look at it as like, if I was a good manager or an agent, I'd be like, I'm grabbing this dude. He works his ass off.
I won't have to do anything, and I'll just get my 15%.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. I just talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There was a famous comedy festival that everybody wants to be on. And there were people that opened for me that were doing the festival. And I thought, hey, how am I not getting on these? I'm like, and then I realized, oh, I get it. I'm not young, and, I can't be placed in some TV shows really easy or whatever. But I always looked at it as like, this is a great story. If they get the guy in the festival, they've got this huge slam dunk of like, this guy started at 44. Mm-hmm. He walked on the Comedy Store patio, didn't know anybody. And now he is full on in the comedy world. So, you could try it at you got a story there that people love, the underdog, like, shit, I could do something.
Yeah.
And I never understood that people didn't want to grab, because, the world loves a story. Mm-hmm. They really do. If you put it on the cover of like Yahoo, comedian at 44 starts comedy, and now he's got a hit podcast. People are like, what's this? They want a story. They love it,
Yeah, and I didn't realize how late in the game you started, or how late in your age you started, until I saw you. I think it was on maybe Bill or one Bill Burr podcast recently. And yeah. It's just an amazing story that made me think. I was like, and you really, with the music thing and the comedy thing, went in late and just balls to the wall. And I guess it's a credit to just hard work,
Well,
and talent, obviously, but there's a lot of talented people that can't.
Right.
Manifest.
I always tell people, man, if you're they go, how did you get there? And then I tell them, I do like 5 open mics a night. Then I get up in the morning, I write, and then I'm on the emails, then I'm podcasting, I book a podcast, then I'm doing auditioning and stuff. And when I tell them all that, they just go like, oh, and they just walk away. They're like, oh, I thought there was some magic key you could hand off to me, which they just discount all the work I've done. They just throw that away.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Do you think when you were writing songs that you were putting some of your humor into them? When you were writing songs as a band or for your rock stuff, were you using some of your comedy in those songs, or were you just writing rock songs and making it rhyme?
Yeah, I am a firm believer. Either you do music or you do comedy. I never liked
the funny song stuff.
Oh man. And it's just the purity for me. But when I started, people were trying to give me advice like, dude, bring your acoustic on there and sing funny songs. I was like, absolutely not. Oh, you should be the rock and roll comic. No. You should be the biker comic. No. I want to be the comedian, because as soon as you're something, if the people don't like that, they won't even look at you. You know, like, I don't like rock, so I ain't looking at that rocker comic. And, you know,
did you practice your jokes in between songs then? Were you
No.
like dabbling at all? No?
I did stage raps. But I wasn't, you know, like by the time I was really touring hard, you know, the guys like I was into Jeff Tweedy. These guys are like introvert, you know,
morose,
like serious, you know, Bruce too, you know, I see the factories closed out there and the people are hurting, you know, you're not going to be up there like, hey man, you know, fucking, it's just, now I did see Jeff Buckley and he was unbelievably funny in between the songs. And I felt like it worked because the songs were so dark. Yeah. You know, it might like be too much tension if it was just all Jeff Buckley dark, and, you know, but it works for Nick Cave, Tom Waits. They're not up there telling jokes. You know, I just hold it I hold it to an art, you know.
It might be kind of genre specific. Now we're sitting here in the Willie Nelson Museum. I'm looking around at all these things, and the old school country guys. Now they were a laugh riot, and they did bits in between, and they're singing their classic country songs. So I didn't think about it till just now, but it seems like, you know, when from Hank Williams on up to a point, humor was a huge thing, and just the stage persona, not necessarily the songs. They've had funny songs too, but maybe there's a difference between a humorous song and a joke song, I guess.
Well, I think when you see somebody like the Highwaymen and you see four legends up there, their life was so brutal that there is humor in there. There's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of family loss, and the lyrics are sometimes pretty dark, but then a little humorous twist. So I think that from their lives and being survivors, they can look back on it. Like if you watch any Willie Nelson interview, you're just going to laugh a little bit, because you're just like, if you watch that Rock and Roll President, Jimmy Carter documentary, because it's just absurd how crazy this life is.
Yeah.
And outside people will just be like, no way did that happen. They're just laughing. And I'm like, it absolutely happened, you know? So there is Bon Scott's my number one singer of all time, number one. And he does have these twists of cool, humorous, you know, lyrics. And that was the genius of Bon. But never did I think it was comedic. I was just like, God, that's genius. The way he puts that, you know?
Cheap Trick's kind of the same way for me. Another one of my favorite singers, Robin Zander, who still angers me when I hear him sing because he hasn't lost anything.
Can't believe it. Saw him do Gonna Raise Hell a couple years ago, and I was like, I can't even believe what I'm seeing. You know, the guy was killing it. Same with Bruce Dickinson, Iron Maiden. It was like, wow, man.
And you too, when I heard you doing Bond for the first time, I was like, there's very few people that don't sound cartoonish when they're doing it. You know, everybody sounds like they're doing a voice. So is that kind of is that sort of your voice tweaked to sound like Bond? Is that your range and register and kind of thing?
Yeah, that is my wheelhouse for sure. Bon and Ozzy, you know, Ozzy say of, I don't know, you know, I don't know, you know, it's kind of in there. I think a lot of people, when they try to do Bon, they mistake what he's doing as screaming or something. You know, they'll be like, I'm on the highway to hell. It's like Daffy Duck squished and compressed. But that's not how he sings, you know? He's just like, it's his natural voice. So he sounds like that. You know, he's like, in the beginning, back in 1955. You know, that's just... it's his singing voice. He's not compressing anything. He's not squishing his throat. You know, it's there.
Is there any other singers that you can totally nail like that?
I can do David Lee Roth a little bit. I used to be able to do him perfect, but I kind of haven't done him in years. But it's really, it's just a certain key of a song, you know. Whatever the key of the song, like AC/DC wrote in a key that's good for me, you know, but I can't do Brian. Brian, like Hell's Bells is,
Man,
I mean,
that dude, I didn't realize how high it was. Like, I can do some Bond, but when you dive into the Brian stuff, that's ridiculous.
well, it's also a tone to it.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting. Like, look, I can sing it. I could do it, but it's the tone that I cannot pull off. Especially stuff like Have a Drink on Me. Like I talked to Brian, I go, when he was singing Back in Black, the record, no way in hell is he going, this record's going to be the biggest selling record of all time. And I'm going to be singing this at 65 years old. He's going in like, this is going to flop. I'm going to balls out this. And this next year, I'll be doing something else. So to sing Have a Drink on Me, which is so high, and Hell's Bells, that's just going for it with no thought of future. Because if you watch him sing in Geordie, he's totally a different singer. He's totally, he's he's like, it's like kind of a T-Rex-ish, kind of vibe.
So I kind of doubling back to the music and comedy thing. When you decided to transform from musician to comedian, I'm sure when you were a musician, I'm sure you at least had meetings with managers. You did meetings with labels, all that kind of stuff that, as we all find out if you're in it long enough, are completely jive. But did any of that experience inform how you went into comedy? Like, I don't need all this stuff. I'm just going to go by myself because more than likely it's the same kind of shit in Hollywood or whatever that it is in the music business.
But, I don't really knock the system. I'm not one of those guys that knocks it. It's like sometimes the system works. They'll get somebody and they'll work the fuck out of it and they'll know how to do it with somebody. But as for me, I never had the people, I constantly wanted a Peter Grant. You just want somebody that is so behind their artist and understands what they're doing. I think the industry now is just geared around it. There's no building of somebody, which is long gone. Now there are clubs that build people, which are great. Like the Denver Comedy Works. That woman, Wendy Curtis, that owns that club, she builds a system and brings in people she believes are the real deal and just starts working them and getting them ready. Comedy Store, same way. Comedy Cellar, The Stand. They find people that are serious and they really do the work. I think that as far as the business, it's just like if they have to work, they look at me and they go, well, that's a white dude, 55 now. I don't know what to do with that guy. And they don't know how to do it. They don't understand vision and stuff. They're not into building someone's career. They're into, let's throw them in some TV shows so I can pay this mortgage and my kids go to a school. I need to get this 10%. And what's 10% of me, $2,000 a week or something? It's like, that ain't nothing. But they don't see how you can build that to guy could be one of the biggest.
It seems to me, we talked about it with music, that age thing. Now, when you're trying to go the traditional route, I'm sure it's still mentioned, but we talk to young kids and stuff. They don't really think about, when I was starting out in music 20, 30 years ago, I remember people having their real age and their Sony age, it was a big hidden secret. But now teenagers I don't think they look at a 55-year-old comedian or a 60-year-old rock dude and even give that a second thought. I mean, maybe it's because if you like rock and roll music, most of the gigantic bands are their parents' age anyway. But I can see where going through the system, like you're explaining, but just recognizing that and working outside of it, there's a whole lot of people out there that don't really give a shit about age. It seems recent.
I'll tell you a good example of that. I had a meeting at Comedy Central. And they said, so you got any ideas? What do you want to do? I go, well, I definitely want to do a special and stuff. And they're like, what else, and I showed them my Instagram because I have a a verified account, I can show them the age group of my followers, which is 50,000 followers, and 80% of them are between 25 and 35. So it's not that, you know, if you have 50,000 followers, they're all under 40 years old, because people in middle America, they, you know, they'll be like, I don't know nothing about that twat or shit or Instagram, you know, they're just like, they don't fuck with that shit. And my crowd is millennials. And that is the Comedy Central and the world of who's going out and who's buying and spending ticket dollars, you know? So I don't really get their idea. They are in this cave that really ruined MTV also, of like, we just get these young, shiny people and we just put them in there and we make a quick dollar and move on. And it's like, that doesn't work. And it's proof, because these networks have disintegrated. Comedy Central, MTV, who the fuck watches any of that stuff, you know? And then you go to YouTube and you see a 60-year-old guy working on Camaros and he's got 2 million followers. And they're like, oh, look at this guy right here. I'm into this. It doesn't matter the age. It's the quality of the content. Mm-hmm. And it's a perfect example, you know, like I had like maybe 4 guys on the show, on the podcast in 10 years from the 80s. Everybody else is current, and a lot of people don't even do interviews. And, you know, so all of a sudden they're like, well, he does that 80s rock show. And it's like, no, I don't. You just saw one interview and, you know, but that's not what it's about. They just don't do the work. And that's the truth on it.
I was curious if you have advice for up and coming musicians or comedians, or if it's the same. At kind of,
you know, I don't know the music world at all. And no matter how much I loved music, if I was a young person right now, I wouldn't probably even start, because I don't even know where to go. Now,
so your advice is to go into comedy?
my advice is go into comedy. Oh, I'll tell you what, comedy is 10 times harder than music. Yeah. That's for damn sure. You're by yourself. You know, you have to write jokes. It's just you up there.
Let's talk a little bit of that, because you've had both experiences. Like, we've talked with the other guys about how it's completely inverted, that, you know, as a band, you'll spend a year or 6 months, whatever. You make a record, you put it out, and you go tour on it. If it's good, you can play that shit for years and years and years. And a lot of times people don't even want to hear anything new. You guys, or the comedy side, you spend a year getting a thing together and nobody really sees it. Then you put it out for everybody to see, and then you can't really go tour it because everybody's seen it. You got to go out there with brand new stuff, and people expect that. It'd be like the Stones putting out a new album and then going out and everybody's like, I don't want to hear the hits. I just want to hear the new stuff. Give me the new stuff. Got to be a strange dynamic, especially for you doing both.
It's completely the opposite. And you're one of the few people that realizes it. I've said that before. It's totally opposite. You work on a record and then you go tour it. And with comedy, you work on the material and then you put the record out and it's done, which is weird. You know, like, and then, you know, early on, I had a couple kind of hit bits. Let's say, you know, these comedians have these ones like Hot Pocket and stuff. Right. And they want to hear, you know, they'll do that on the encore or something. But I have a serious problem in comedy with myself where the bit kills for about a year and then it doesn't work anymore because I just don't have the soul to deliver it anymore. And I couldn't imagine being a comedian from the 70s and 80s, pre Netflix, pre YouTube, pre Instagram, where you could just tour the same material for years.
Nobody's hearing,
you know, nobody. Yeah. So I wouldn't be able to do that because I have bits. Once in a while, I'll back myself in a corner and be having a bad show. And I'll whip out this old classic. This will get them. And it'll just fucking tank even worse because I just don't have the fire for it. And even if I try to fake it or get fired up on it, it just doesn't work. And so I need to kind of do the stuff and then move on. So, you don't turn into a robot.
Right. I think maybe people are wired differently because there's plenty of musicians with that 1 or 2 hit songs that are sick of playing them and won't play them. And then there's others, like I think your grandpa, like these are the hits. These are the ones that people are showing up.
Yeah.
I wrote them. I like them. I'll play whatever anybody wants to hear. It's just, I guess, different personalities, different takes on it, you know?
Well, with music, look, I'm a deep music fan.
For sure.
And when I go to a show, and I get it, it really happened. I think in the last 10 years, I've become a giant Deadhead. I hated the Dead growing up, and now I'm obsessed with the Dead.
That's a big turn of events.
It really is. I think because I grew up in the Bay Area, and it was just in my face all the time. Dude, I need a miracle. And I was like, these Trustafarians. It was the fans I didn't dig growing up because I was such a blue collar grinder, and I was like, get out of here, you hippie, But it's funny because I was born in Yosemite. I love hippies and I love the outdoors and I love all that stuff. And I love all races and sexualities and everything, it's like, but I didn't dig that kind of freeloader vibe. So once I started getting into the Dead, and I really think like the Black Crowes early on got me into this, where I'm seeing the Black Crowes 5 nights and they're not playing the same set. And that's what I need as a deep fan. Because then I can go see you multiple nights. But if I go see multiple nights and you play the same set each night, I'm done. But I get it. Most fans are surface fans, and they go and they want to remember, like, here comes Born to Run. Yeah. But I want Meeting Across the River. I want Youngstown, stuff like that. But that's me. And it's just selfish, like I'm a super fan. I've seen all this, but I would love to see more acts after COVID do special nights. Like they were doing that for a few years. We're going to play this whole album top to bottom. Stones did it. And Cheap Trick did it. And a lot of people have done that. But I would like to see a band come to town and they go, like the Stones. Look, I love the Stones. They're one of the greatest bands of all times, but I don't need any of the songs in the set list at all.
Right.
I want to hear Waiting on a Friend, into Tops, into, like all these deep tracks. I want to hear the Some Girls record, that kind of stuff. And I would love to see a band, and Stones did it. I worked for the Stones from 2002 to 2006, and they were doing a cool thing where they had a wheel on stage. They would spin it at night and it would land on a record, and they'd play. At first they wanted to do the whole record, but it got too hard. So they would play like 5 songs from that record.
That's cool.
I think Elvis Costello did that at one point here to Exit In. Yeah.
They also did a killer thing where they roll into town. They play a football stadium, an indoor venue, and a club. It was sick.
Were you working the tour when they were doing this?
Yeah. I was working the tour when they were doing that. So, I saw them in theaters, it was like when you see the Stones in like a small theater in like Paris or London, or say the Wiltern in LA, it's so powerful. You can't even believe what you're seeing. It's so powerful, man. You're like, whoa, these guys are a different band when they're not playing to 70,000.
Really leaning into each other and all that.
And you really see it and feel it, man, you know?
There's some great stories. Steve Gorman, I don't know, you've probably read his new book about the Black Crowes. He lives here in town. But
he's one of my great friends. He plays in the AC/DC band.
I've seen some clips there. Yep.
Yeah.
But there's stories in that book about how when they were touring with the Stones, how they basically had a small village for the crew to get there, and just the exit when they, when he described sitting in a police car, blacked out, and all of a sudden all the lights come on at the same time and zoom, they're gone.
Yeah, that's a true story. Yeah. True story. Pretty wild, man. That's a great band. That is a great band that has some of the most insane. I don't even know who Mick Jagger was from 68 to around 78, but whoever he was writing those lyrics of like, can't you hear me knocking, street fighting man, sympathy for the devil. I don't know who that man was, but wow, he tapped into something, because later on, of course, he gets into, I go crazy. I get hot. You get hot. Ooh, like just kind of that kind of lyrical thing. But that stuff he was laying out as some of the greatest lyrics of all time.
I don't think he gets enough credit for his lyrics.
No, he really doesn't, man.
A lot of it,
68 to 78. Wow.
Maybe it's his delivery, and some of those you got to lean into here. But man, when you see it, on paper and like, wow, he's talking about some stuff here.
Big time, big time. And, Can't You Hear Me Knocking is the greatest tune ever wrote by those guys. It is a saga.
Nasty groove that they put down for that record.
Oh, man. Mick Taylor. What are you doing? That guy is a genius.
Hitting their stride, as they say.
Yeah.
So, shitty gigs. I'm sure you've done it. We've talked about with all the comedians some of our shitty gigs, and like when you're first starting out and some of the things I'm sure you've played for some semi-empty rooms or completely empty rooms. Any of that? Probably on both sides, I
think the problem with comedy is it's this format where you come into a city and you do one Thursday night, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, sometimes 1 on Sunday. When you're at my level, you could sell out one night. So the other nights are either going to be completely emptied or what they call papered rooms, where they went to malls or radio and gave away tickets. So the people don't even know who the fuck you are. We got free tickets to see some Del Rod, and those are always brutal because you're up there and they don't know who you are. And sure, that's cool for 20 minutes, but when you're doing 50, you just, it's a long night. And I want to get to a period where I just book a slew of dates, one-nighters in each city in the best room. Like I just did one in Austin right before the lockdown, a killer rock club, 300 people sold out. Great. All know who I am. They listen to the podcast. They're on board. I could get into stories. I got jokes that are long stories that are funny and shit. So I want to get into that, but you also kind of need both when you're learning to headline like me. You need to be able to battle those long weekends and really find out who the hell you are on stage. That's how you learn and earn the craft of building an hour in front of strangers. Like, this shit is working and they don't even know who I am. So you do need both, and it's a balance.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When we first starting with this band, just finding any gig to get in front of people to play, for us to figure it out, working together on stage. And, those bad gigs for you, you're just stuck up there by yourself trying to work through. At least as a band, you kind of got a gang. And if people are indifferent, you can just play loud and entertain yourselves. And maybe comedians, maybe if it's bad and you find the bartender or the waitress or somebody that's really getting it, maybe that gets you through. I don't know. There's got to be stuff like that goes on both sides,
That's what I was saying. Music, as soon as you're there and it's a bad gig, you're like, this is how you know it's a bad gig. You show up and the guy goes, "Yeah, man, County Fair's in town. It's open tonight." You already know what he's saying. Ain't going to be anybody here. All the college team is in the playoffs and it's the big game tonight. You're like, what the fuck? You pull into town. It's spring break, man. Everybody left town. Oh, it's finals week. Or this one, I don't know what happened. We're usually full. That one makes you feel like a piece of shit. Last week we had Billy Bob here and it was I don't know. I did everything. You're just like, oh, it's all of those things that it's going to be a rotten night. But I know you guys know this. a lot of times you'll judge it in the green room like, this is going to be horrible. And then it's one of the greatest gigs ever. Yeah. And that reminds me right there every time, hey, there's 20 here, but they came out. They came out. They got babysitters. They paid for parking and they bought a ticket, or even if they got in free, they got to have 2 drink minimum. They came out. Let's do this, you know?
We say that all the time. If anybody's there, it still shocks me. I'm like, they paid $15 to come sit here and watch,
leave their house
to watch me do this, you know?
Yeah. And during COVID, I've learned one thing, man. I've never been home. I have never been home. And I've been home now for 12 months next week, other than a run with Burr in Texas in December and some shows I've been doing recently. And you start to think like, man, I don't want to go out, you know, like there's like people out there and there's fucking, you know, neck grabbers. Dude, you were funny, man. There's the fucking close talkers. There's the stinky microphone. There's the TSA line. I don't want to go. I like this place. You know? So the calluses start to erode and you start to go like, hey, man, I don't have a problem just podcasting. And I love comedy more than anything. You know what I mean? I mean, more than anything, but I'm like, man, like I'm going to Iowa next week, you know, Des Moines. Yeah. This is going to be the first flight I've taken since COVID.
Oof.
And I know. And I'm going like, man, do I want to do that?
And if you're like us where we are, when we play gigs, we make money if we go to the merch table and do the close talking and do all.
That's the only way you make money.
It is, because you can't. We sell CDs, but I guarantee you nobody takes them home and puts them in a CD player. They'll get them signed. They'll put them up somewhere, but it's just a piece of merch, you know?
That's all it is. It's something to chop cocaine up on.
Exactly.
Late night. You know, hey, get that CD case. Man, we saw these guys.
Right. It is funny nowadays. If what you really want is to get a song in a commercial or to get a song in a movie. Yeah. However, when we were young, if you did that shit,
sacrilege. Sacrilege.
How dare you? Bill Hicks had a great bit on it. He excused your grandfather for selling out to Taco Bell because of the IRS. I loved
that commercial too that my grandpa did.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's completely flipped. That and cover bands.
Yeah.
When I was younger,
those were all no-nos.
No. And now I don't know what it's like there, but in town they call them tributes now. They'll generally just pick one band.
This is my next question. Hypothetical situation. What if I were to cut my hair like yours and dress like you and get some glasses like yours and go out and work the comedy rooms with your jokes and be a Dean Del Rey cover comic? What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny you say that because I've been saying for like 5 years, I think it's only a matter of time. I truly believe this, that Vegas is going to have like, see the legends, and it'll be like Bill Hicks, Rodney Dangerfield, Sam Kinison. And it's going to be dudes that look like them doing the jokes. I fully believe they're going to do that.
Would you like to see that show, or are you like,
no, absolutely not. First of all, you're just pilfering their material, which is the number one rule of comedy. Don't steal someone's material. And then you're making money off their material and their likeness. I think it would be the most horrific show ever, or hologram of Richard Pryor's show. I just, I believe that somebody has thought about this. Or, see Seinfeld from 82, like you just see the Seinfeld 82 run or whatever. I don't know, but I think what people would miss would be the actual personality and the danger of comedy. That's basically just a formatted, the set worked. The guy would have to need to learn how. Look, I can tell you, I can hand you my jokes and you could read them and people wouldn't laugh, because it is a skill and it is a personality. It is a delivery and a cadence and a vibe to the person.
Yeah.
So it's not like a cover song where you learn the vocal and the chords and people are like, oh, I love Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Yeah.
You know, but if you went out there and tried to do, say, Eddie Murphy's Delirious, I don't think it would really work. You know, maybe old people like, oh man, remember this? Hell yeah. Back when you could be racist. Ah, you know, it's like, you know, people are nuts like that, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think it would work, but I know people have probably thought about that.
I just find it extremely interesting that you can't cover.
I'm sure somebody could do it. I'm sure there could be a guy out there that looks like Pryor and could study it for years and go out and do Pryor, you know, like they were. Here's a good example. Of course, they've been trying to do the Pryor movie for years, but there was a minute. Marin and I talked about this. I forget who it was, and I think the clip might be on YouTube. But there was a minute where they were working on a Kinnison film, and there was a guy that was playing Kinnison, and it was fucking good, man. It was only like 7-minute clip, I guess. And I was watching it going like, fuck, man, this guy's nailing it. But that's a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But man, did he have the cadence, the moves, the little, you know, inflections, just all of that, the movement. And then you had the clothing and the laugh and everything. And it was really good. So
I think the problem,
somebody could do it if they studied it, but I don't know. It wouldn't be like legit where people would be like, dude, we got to go to that. You know,
well, it's like an Elvis impersonator. Okay.
Yeah.
He looks like him, but it's not the same. And maybe you could get away with that kind of stuff back in the 70s and 80s and 90s when you couldn't just go on YouTube and go find an old clip.
Yeah. It's funny. I like the rock films. I always fall for them, you know. Sometimes they just, I thought the Queen one was fantastic. People are like, not enough man on man, or it was, you know, it was like, hey man, we're trying to, you know, present a band here that not everybody knows Queen. You know, the deep Queen fans go and they go, this is bullshit. But it opened up so many people to Queen, which is incredible, you know.
Yeah.
I love a lot of people are like, it was a play on, it was a rock opera, you know, the Elton John one. I thought that was killer. Did you see that one?
I didn't see that one.
I didn't see either of those. My favorites are the actual rock documentaries, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a crazy story. I was in the Doors movie when I was a kid. Yeah.
I did see that.
The scene got cut out, but I was in it, shot for 2 days. They had me looking like Paul Williams, you know, and like back then I had like long blonde hair. So I kind of looked like Greg Allman, you know, so it will make you like Paul Williams. They gave me a white leather suit with fringe, you know, but I think one of the most incredible things I ever saw, we were on the set, and it was a secret set. They bust us there and they go, it's a secret set. On the way there, they go, look, when you see Val Kilmer, you got to call him Jim. And we're like, that's so corny. And it's just the rule, man. You got to call him Jim. He's a method actor. He's in it. And that's the rule. We're like, all right. I'll tell you what, this motherfucker, we were on the set for a couple hours waiting. We were in the Miami scene where he supposedly whips his dick out. You know, that's the famous scene. He's got the sheep, you know. Anyway, we're in this green room scene, and he comes storming in. And he's like, hey, man, how is it out there? You know, it's like this loud scene. He just shows up, and I fucking froze in my shoes. I mean, I was like, what the fuck? Just looking at him like, I can't even believe what I'm seeing. And then he walked on stage and he sang that shit. It wasn't a tape. He was singing the stuff for real. You know, the day destroys the night, night divides the day. And I was like, I can't even believe he's singing this. And it blew my fucking mind for 2 days, man.
That is a heavy method right there.
I never stopped watching it. I never stopped watching him. It was insane. And Oliver Stone was killing it. He was in this crane with binoculars, and he'd be like, guy in the 5th row wearing Oakley glasses, get rid of those. You know, like he was just studying people's outfits, and he was watching the tape of the Miami show, and he's going back and forth, and he's A-Bing it. And he's like, you moved wrong. It was unreal. But that guy killed it, man. It's, you know, the band hates it or whatever, but I loved it.
Yeah. It reminds me of the what was the Jim Carrey thing where he was playing Andy Kaufman? They did a whole documentary. He jumped into that.
Smoking.
Have you seen the documentary about the kind of the behind the scenes?
Unreal.
When he showed up as Tony Hinchcliffe, Tony, his alter ego. I'm blanking.
Yeah. What is his last name? Tony. God damn it, I know it too.
Dude, crazy. Anybody that's watching this at this point is
everybody's screaming. I'm fucking this guy ain't a comedian. I don't even know that. Tony
Clifton.
Tony.
That's
Clifton.
it.
There it is.
It's so
It
close.
was Tony Clifton. You guys better edit that. We look bad.
Clip that right in. Everybody knows it's Tony Clifton.
Dude, that's how my brain works, though, man. It could fire perfect, and then I'll see a guy I know, and I'll be like, fuck, what's this guy's name, man? I think the phones have melted our brains.
It's worse when you know him and you just can't bring the name. You don't want to be the ass going, hey, man.
Dude. I mean,
know you.
Yeah. It's so funny, man.
So I wanted to ask you, when was the first time that you heard of my grandpa, Papa Willie?
Oh, you know, Willie, I've seen Willie so many times. One of the greatest was at the Fillmore. Oh my God.
What year?
In the Fillmore. What
yeah,
year? I guess 90s.
90, yeah.
Yeah, late 90s. He was giving a headband out every song.
Yeah.
It was wild. He had his daughter on piano.
His sister.
Or
Yeah.
sister on piano. She's
Yeah.
killing it. Willie is really, when I was growing up, it's one of those things like, I hate country, except for Willie and Johnny and Chris Christopherson. And, you know, I loved The Star Is Born as a kid. I just thought that movie was fucking magic. And Willie would, you know, he'd just be that Redheaded Stepchild record. That was just standard rock and roll. Willie was rock and roll to me. And Outlaw Country was definitely just so deep growing up in the Bay Area. You know, like people were into Outlaw Country. Johnny Cash and Willie were just standards along with AC/DC.
Yeah.
And, but I think really when I got into Willie really hard was, what's that big comeback record? The bluish cover.
Oh, there's so many.
It's hold on. I'll tell you. It's
after
a big.
Stardust.
Stardust. Hold on. Yeah, Stardust. That's it.
Yeah.
So there's a hit on there. I forget what it is, but I bought that record, and then I was back on board big time, and just started seeing Willie every time he came around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was just. I just love everything about the guy too. I'm dying to have him on the podcast for 10 years. Dream guest, you know.
Yeah.
I loved everything about him, you know, that whole thing of the tour bus living on his property. I loved how he was just out working all the time, and the weed thing. I'm not a weed smoker, but just believing in people should be able to smoke weed because booze is way worse. You know, people don't fight on weed.
Yeah.
And that whole thing with his guitar, the original one and it's got the hole in it, the Martin, you know, I'm a huge Martin guy. And there was just everything about him and then I dug way back into early Willie, you know, pre-long haired hippie Willie and stuff. And you're like, this guy's he is a fucking treasure, man, an American treasure. And all the other guys are gone. You know, I mean, Chris Christopherson's here, but I'm talking about all the other guys are gone. I saw them all, you know, I saw fucking Merle and open for Dylan, you know, but we wouldn't be talking about Willie if he wasn't the great songwriter that he is. And
Yeah.
that's the most important thing over anything is songwriting. I tell people that all the time. We would not be talking about Willie. We wouldn't be talking about Bruce. We wouldn't be talking about Dylan without the songs.
We
Right.
probably
These
wouldn't,
guys-
probably wouldn't be talking about Willie at all if they didn't basically throw him out of Nashville. You know,
Yeah.
that Jerry Wexler guy, I think it was Atlantic or Columbia or wherever, met him in New York and heard some stuff and was like, you should come record. And he's like, well, I kind of want to use my own band. And Willie was saying, they say I can't sing. They say my phrasing's off. Wexler's like, no, it's like Sinatra. It's like this. You have a weird thing. Come up and do it. And that's when they did the gospel record. He's like, okay, I'm going to get my sister to play in the band. He put that band together and they knocked out the gospel thing. And I think they had a couple of weeks left. And he's like, you got anything else? And he's like, well, no, not really. And he was playing him some weird stuff. So he said, we got 2 weeks. You got a band, just record. And I think that's Redheaded Stranger. He recorded it and just kind of came up with a whole new genre because this guy said, I believe in you. You write great songs. Don't do them like they're telling you to do. I've done Ray Charles. I've done that. I know to let people to stay out of the way. And, you know, he facilitated that outside of Nashville, which is
One
crazy.
of my favorite stories that my grandpa tells me is there was a producer that wanted him to do something, and Papa Willie just did what he wanted to do. And the producer's like, okay, let's do it one more time, but this time I want you to do it like this. And Papa Willie's like, okay. And then he just did exactly what he wanted to do, you know. And he said that it was like 7 or 8 different takes where he literally just did what he wanted to do. And the producer's like, okay, never mind.
I see what's going
I
on here.
see what's going on.
well, that's the thing about Willie, you know, and it goes back to what I was saying early on. You got people back in the day that could see something and be like, this is something here. Same with Dylan. I mean, Dylan, are you kidding me? You know, like, you know, people are like, oh man, you know, people like Irving Azoff, people like these guys that believed in people and went for it.
Well,
And that's vision, and also not thinking about the dollar. They're not like, you know what, I see Willie, I'm going to make so much money on this guy. They're like, this guy is something different, man. And Willie's playing is unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get the
Django.
credit. Doesn't get the credit for a guitar player. I think he's over.
Oh my God. You know, when he just like, I think he did an unplugged. Am I right on that?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Austin
he
City
did.
Limits or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've seen him on Austin City Limits, but he did one of those, and you're just watching his playing. You're going, oh, this guy is just. So, I mean, he's playing a a Martin that's supposed to be for it's a nylon string, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, Sue Foley plays nylon, and it was so cool to hear a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. She's just playing this nylon. It's that sound, you know.
And it's
And,
when he plays live, it's weird. You know, you plug in and it sound. It doesn't matter whether he's playing through an amp or whether there's a mic in front of it. It sound. One of the first songs we wrote together years ago when we first started this band. She emailed or texted Willie to see if he'd play on it, and he actually ended up playing and singing. But I just remember when I got the files back, pulled them up in the computer, and the trigger comes on. I was like, wow, that's Willie Nelson. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
cried.
remember seeing him on 60 Minutes about, man, I'm so bad with time. I could say 15 years ago, it's probably 20, but it was one of the last interviews that, what was the guy's name? I forget his name, interviewed him, and it was killer. It was killer, man. It was, and
He's
that was
good
like,
at interviews. He's always been really good at getting interviewed.
yeah, he's great, man. He's just honest. You know?
Yeah,
He's like,
dropping wisdom and dropping jokes and just
Yeah.
and knowing when to shut up and like
Ed Bradley. It was Ed Bradley's one of his last interviews.
You know, he is for the underdog, and I mean everyone could be shitting on someone and he'll come up with 5 reasons why that person's the best person in the world. And he's also really loyal to all of his people he's been with. I mean, I think he's the most like Jesus that's ever been, you know. He's just
I mean, look at, I think I've seen over a couple thousand shows.
wow. Yeah.
Highwaymen in the top 5. I'm talking, Prince, Highwaymen, Springsteen on the 99 reunion, AC/DC Back in Black tour. You know, Highwaymen was up there. You know, Sade on the Smooth Operator tour. These are like when you see people and you're going like, oh, this is just some beyond shit. But when you had those legends up there and they're telling stories and they're playing each other's songs, you're like, this is so mind-boggling, man. You know,
Yeah.
it's insane. And that song, Highwayman, is the greatest, man. It just reminds me of just being a nomad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's 4 heavyweights. I mean, you meet these guys. I've never met Johnny Cash, but I had a friend. He's like, when I shook the man's hand, like in a studio, he's like, there's something radiating off of him. You know, I'm not, you know, star fucking or anything. It's just this guy carries a heavy energy around that is not normal, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Those guys, man. And their voices, you know, I'm a highwayman. You're like, that's a human voice. Like, there are no voices like that. The reason that works is they're all this thing. We got a Willie voice. You got a Christopherson voice. You got, you know, these voices are so different. And I think in the world of The Voice and America's Got Talent and all that, we lose a lot of that because people think it's all about vocal acrobats of like how high or where, you know, like, and people go, whoa, she can sing. But that's not what it's about, man. You know, that is not what it's about.
It's getting weird out there in the rock or, you know, sort of rockish country thing we do with all the auto tune and all of the chopping and slicing and everything. It's getting strange out there, man. We'll go
auto tune is ridiculous to me. It's like become an instrument now.
And it makes everybody sound the same.
Yeah, it's a sound that people are so used to hearing that if it doesn't have it, they're like craving it to hear it.
But
people are like, oh, this guy sucks. He doesn't have that, you know, like.
But we've encountered going out and playing because we're basically a 4-piece rock band, and there's not a lot, like when we play clubs and things, people aren't used to seeing a show anymore. When we came up, if you went to a bar, even a local band, they better be doing something other than just standing there. Yeah. And I don't think people get that. Anybody that's 40 years old or older that comes, number one, they're like, well, I wasn't expecting that because they were expecting a hardcore country because of Willie Nelson's granddaughter. But number two, you can see their eyes light up and they're like, I remember this. I remember rock bands. People are hitting wrong notes. People are tripping over each other. People are cracking wise. Anything can happen, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's a tough thing to be in because it's been around so fucking long. It's like seeing it. You know, a lot of people, I said when COVID's back and when it's gone, I'm only going to probably see about 3 bands the rest of my life because I know I've seen everybody else, unfortunately, at their fucking greatest.
Yeah.
And, you know, most bands didn't last a long time. So you're like, I saw fucking Caius open for Danzig at UC Davis. They killed, you know, but if you could see Caius 40 years later, keep going, you're like, oh yeah, I saw him at Davis, man. You know, it's like, I'm really into seeing new bands. I love Marcus King. You know, people are like, what about Black Crowes? You're going to go see that, man? They don't got the original guys and stuff. I saw them.
Yeah.
50 times with the greatest lineup ever. I'm going to go see Marcus King. I'm going to go see, you know, Co Wetzel. I'm going to go see, you know, like I'm going to go see the new stuff. I don't need to keep rehashing every year the same stuff with different band members and everything because I don't want it to taint or pollute the memories I have of how great those shows were.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to start looking at my phone, texting and stuff like I was there just to say I was there. You know, fuck. I go to stuff now that's really special. Mr. Bungle. I went to that a year ago. That was unreal. Slayer's last shows, unreal. That kind of stuff. Go see special stuff or new shit all day long.
So you're probably out of the going to see bands in an arena phase then, because most of those bands you've seen, like if you're like me, the smaller the venue that you can see them in, the better.
Well, I like a balance. I do like to watch a band grow. Let's talk about U2. I saw U2 at the US Festival, but they were a newer band. By the time I saw Octung Baby, it was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen in my life, hands down. That's a thing where you get to see these acts grow. And then after that, I'm good. I saw it all the way up to the monster peak. But with Maiden, I love seeing them because they're going to do something crazy different every time with the stage, and they do switch up the set list. But yeah, if it's a band and it's like arena after arena after arena every year, and it's kind of the similar set list, I don't go to that.
Yeah.
Dean, thank you so much for doing this with us.
If you have a second, we can get your fortune told by a Willie Nelson fortune machine.
But the worst looking Papa Willie fortune telling machine.
We've been doing
with
everybody. We just carried it up front.
Yeah, let's do it.
And before we let you go, also, I want to send you a souvenir from the gift shop. Would you like a coffee mug, a Papa Willie coffee mug, or a Waylon or Johnny Cash one?
T-shirts.
What about one of those bandanas?
Okay, I'll find you a bandana. All right.
Yeah, because that's usable these days.
Very good point. Okay. All right, let me get this going. You pull that up.
Okay. Wow, what is that place you're at?
So we're at the Papa Willie Museum and Showcase, right
by
Opryland.
Where is that?
It's by Opryland area in Nashville.
Oh man, Burr and I did the Grand Ole Opry, the
Ryman, maybe.
The Ryman. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a fucking, I'll never forget it. 4 shows.
I haven't been able to play there yet, but I've been there quite a few times, of course. And it's like we were talking about being around Johnny and the energy there. The energy there is just.
It's unreal. It's unreal. It's unreal. I'll never forget it. The Rival Sons came, Jay. That's another band I would definitely just see every year. Rival Sons.
Look at this.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. I love that. I did comedy recently in a case, and that's what I felt like, a fortune teller. I was in a goddamn case like that.
Okay, hold on. There we go. Am I doing it right?
Trying. Look at that. Fortune teller.
Take this word of advice from Willie Nelson. There are more serious problems in the world than financial ones, and I've had a lot of those. I've been broke before, and I will be again. But through it all, I've learned some great truth. Stick around to listen to more. I'm full of it.
Whose voice is that?
It's mine. No, I don't know. It's not his.
That's hilarious. I've been broke before, and I'll be broke again. But take my advice out there. Smoke a reefer, get a headband, and play rock and roll.
So, the funny story about that fortune teller machine is my Aunt Amy and I found it downtown in Broadway.
Oh, yeah?
And it was in some stupid souvenir shop, and we thought it was hilarious and took a whole bunch of videos and sent them to Papa Willie. And he hated it. And he was like, who has that? And a few months later, it showed up here at the Papa Willie Museum. So I don't know who he called. It moved here, but it was definitely moved here. But it makes.
Did he move it there? Like, get it out of there. I don't want it out there.
It's what it seemed like, yeah.
Does he still got that tour bus that runs on the vegetable oil?
No, I don't think he's doing the biodiesel on it anymore, but he still has his honeysuckle rose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, he was really into that for a while, and he even bought me a card where I could do that, and I found like 2 places.
Was it a Mercedes?
It was a Jetta, a Volkswagen Jetta,
but
I had to sell it because I had too many kids, couldn't fit them all in there.
Oh, you got kids?
I have 3 kids. I have twins that are almost 14. They're boys, and I have a little girl. Yeah, that's 12. I started really early.
Yeah, I would say. I thought you were about 25.
Yeah,
hilarious.
25. I love that. Let's stick with.
Yeah, 25. I'm not kidding you. I did. I thought you were like 25.
I'm almost 37. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. And like I said, I love me some Doug Stanhope, and I love you guys. It's awesome to talk music and comedy with you guys.
If you're ever in Nashville, look us up.
I'm always in Nashville when there's no COVID. I love it.
Well, let us know when next time you come down. We'll hook up, brother.
You got it. You got it. Can't wait to see you guys.
All right, man. Have a good one.
See ya.
Dude, I love Dean Del Rey.
How much does that guy know about music?
So much. I felt kind of stupid, but by the end of it, I think I'm a little smarter now.
Yes, I think me too. I guarantee he's the guy that all of his comedian friends go to when they have a question about music. He'd be the source.
Yeah, he's now my guy to go to ask for about music.
Exactly. But anyway, special thanks to Dean Del Rey for doing that with us and
Thanks,
sit down. Next week, I think we have Kathleen Madigan on.
Yes, so come back. And also we have a live stream show April 20th, 420 at 4:20 p.m. Central. So buy tickets. Go to our Raylan Nelson Band website. It'll give you the details.
Tune in next week, next Wednesday, Kathleen Madigan. Enjoy your groceries.
A free Britney. I know your mama's name. Okay, did we do it?
You did.